you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready, right? Hey, I'm Kayla Mando, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for being here. Today I want to talk a little bit about what a fucking write-off Q3 was and how I'm hoping to fix that in Q4. So my big goal in Q3 was based around this fiction that I was going to submit to Pitch Wars. I wasn't actually, but I was using it as a deadline and a framing device in order to get some shit done that I wanted to accomplish. In order to submit to Pitch Wars, I would need a query letter, a synopsis, and as perfect as possible manuscript, all by September 30th. Technically September 26th is when submissions would have opened, but September 30th was the very last day I could submit. An as perfect as possible manuscript means that it needs to go to betas, get beta feedback, and then be revised again, implementing as much of that feedback as I feel like is necessary. That didn't happen. I had this great timeline set up where I was going to finish my manuscript in July, get it to betas by the end of July. They could give me feedback during August while I wrote my query and my synopsis, and then in September I would make sure that I was implementing whatever beta feedback felt the most useful to me. That didn't really happen because July was a complete fucking nightmare of depression and unproductivity, which meant that my manuscript was not ready to go to betas even though I had so little left to do. I didn't end up finishing it until partway through August, and only then did I start to think about getting it to people who could give me feedback. The knock-on impact of that, of course, was that I didn't get feedback in time to make any substantive changes before the deadline came in. And the fact of the matter is that I needed substantive changes. It needs huge structural changes, and it needs very significant character changes for Alex. He is as boring as I was afraid he was, and changing that is not a simple matter. There is a part of me that wants to say, I had a query letter, I had a synopsis, I had a manuscript. Technically speaking, I hit the goal for submitting to Pitch Wars. I technically hit those milestones. But that's disingenuous. That's not like truly honest to the situation, because I know that I would not be happy submitting the manuscript that I have now. I'm not ready to go to a mentor, agent, editor phase with what I'm working with now. It needs such huge structural changes that the final product will be vastly different from what it is right now. And because of that, I find myself in the exact same position that I was a few years ago with my necromancy book. I had a book that I cared about, a story that I liked, and structural changes that I did not know how to tackle, and I didn't manage to get done before Pitch Wars. Some of that is that I just don't really know how to revise books. I haven't done a lot of it, and it's not fair to expect myself to be good at something I haven't done very often. It's not fair to expect myself to know how to make structural changes that I've never made before. And also that my discipline isn't great when it's something that I find challenging or scary. When my perfectionism is called into question, I manage to find ways in which to avoid it. So one of the things that really didn't serve me well in Q3 was that I took away all of the guidelines around how often I should write and how long I should write for. At the beginning of Q3, I told myself that it was so I could get a little freedom, a little break from the burnout that I was feeling in Quarters 1 and 2 when I had implemented some pretty strict rules about how often I wrote. But the fact of the matter was, it just let me fall into these patterns of depression and avoidance that really don't serve me well. And I have seen that stricter guidelines and more structure serves me and my creativity really well. That's what we saw in both Quarters 1 and 2 when I forced myself to write more regularly and more consistently. The quality of my writing improved, and how easy it was for me to get into writing every day improved. Because I was already in the habit, my muscles were already stretched for that. I wasn't having to force myself back into it every time I wanted to write. Q4 is all about getting back into the habit of writing. It's about relearning those patterns that I was establishing and then let myself break in a way that is both gentle on myself as I move forward out of the worst of my depression, but also structured enough that I am learning to be more disciplined and learning to be stricter with myself. For October and December, I'm going to implement my 2-day rule, which means that I can skip a day of writing if I want to, but I can't skip 2 in a row. Ideally, this means that every other day I'm actually getting some writing done, and I'm gonna have myself go back to that 1 hour of writing a day, ideally in the morning before work, so I can't get myself stuck in waiting room brain, and so that I can avoid being burned out from work and then not feeling like writing. For those months, I'm also going to be working on the big structural changes that Karen Alex's book need. I have figured out how I want to change that book and the ways in which I want to make it tighter and cleaner and make my characters stronger, which I can talk about in a future video. But for now, suffice it to say, I have a roadmap, and I'm cautiously optimistic about it. So for October and December, I'm really going to focus on getting those changes made with consistency and a little bit more structure than I have allowed myself in the last quarter, the last few months, so that ideally we can actually have the next version of this book done early in 2022. I would really love to say I want to get the next version of this book done by the beginning of 2022, but I don't know that that's feasible. And I really want to set myself up for wins in terms of my goals for this next quarter. You will notice that I said October and December are my 2-day rule and working on structural changes for Kara and Alex, and that is because, as you may have guessed, November I'm going to do National Novel Writing Month. My NaNoWriMo project this year is a vampire love story set in the world of a series I would like to tackle someday. And because it is so outside of the Kara and Alex book, because it is a new world with new characters, with none of that frustration of my previous missteps with Kara and Alex, I'm really hoping that it allows me to just inhabit a kind of joyful creative space that gives me a break from the hard revision process that I find so easy to burn out on, while still staying in the creative process. Ideally, this will let me reinvigorate myself creatively while avoiding burnout on the Kara and Alex book. It also means that I will not be doing my 2-day rule in November. I will be trying really hard to hit that writing 1,700 words every day goal, because that's, you know, the NaNoWriMo way, and I have succeeded at Nano like a number of times before. Not every time I've done it, but enough that I know I can do it, and I'm hoping that I can do it again this year. I'm hoping that playing in a new creative space will give me the drive I need to succeed at it again. The other reason that I'm not pushing myself to for sure get my structural revisions done on Kara and Alex's book by the end of 2021 is this. These are all the books I told myself I was going to either read this year or unhaul at the end of the year. Now, some of those books are multiple books in the same series, which I'm going to give myself a little bit of a break on. If I start the series and I like it enough to continue, I'm going to let myself hold on to the later books in the series for next year. But everything that is either the first book in the series or a standalone, I have to have finished by the end of the year, or I have to unhaul it, because a lot of them I just don't need to hold on to. I hoard books like a dragon, and I'm trying to not become a hoarder who ends up crushed to death under a stack of romance novels one day. So those are my goals going forward into quarter 4. Add some discipline to my life with the 2-day rule, give myself a creative break / rejuvenation period with my vampire project for NaNoWriMo, and tackle that huge pile of books I either need to read or get rid of. I'm hoping that reading those books, which are not just mafia romances, will help me be a little bit more creative and a little bit more generative as I move forward. So the hope is that all of those goals sort of feed into each other in a way that I find sustainable and achievable, because I do not want another quarter 3. I do not want another situation in which I have failed to meet the goals that I set for myself, especially because quarter 3's goals felt so light and so attainable. It feels very gross to be sitting here and not having achieved them. I do not want to take that energy into 2022 if it's at all possible. So I definitely need accountability buddies. I definitely need someone to kick my ass a little. If you would like to remind me that I should be writing, down in the comments, I would love that. I will definitely need the reminder. And if you were looking for me anywhere else, I am pretty much everywhere as Kayla Amanda. That is KAYLUGHMANDA. And I will see you next time. Now I have to fucking put these all back.